Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon, and I am flying solo today. Of course, Geeky Sparkles is not with me. She's working the election, so she may not be in any videos today. She might pop in later. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but she is definitely missed. I'm going to talk about Spotify and Joe Rogan. Now, I do watch Joe Rogan on occasion. I don't watch him regularly, but I get the gist of what his show is about, and that the guy is about free speech and about listening to ideas from opposing viewpoints or from your opposition, and trying to have discussions. We don't have discussions much anymore, but Joe Rogan is being censored, especially due to his choice of guests. And this has been something that has come up ever since he made that fat deal with Spotify, $100 million or some insane amount of money. And people are like, how is that going to work? Because some of the guests he has on his show are pretty controversial. And the short answer is it's not going to work out very well, because Spotify has a small contingent of woke employees that don't think that anyone who disagrees with them should have any voice in on any platform. And of course, one of the big bads is Alex Jones, who has been deplatformed from pretty much every social media platform at this point. And he made an appearance on Alex Jones' show, and it turned out that it was Spotify employees that internally flagged that episode. So a small amount of them are outraged. And what's interesting is, we talk about the employees and how much, employees at some of these Silicon Valley companies think they should have in regards to having a say in what the company does. And we saw this with Kickstarter too, where they actually unionized because they wanted to be able to dictate which comics projects Kickstarter did and didn't do, and Kickstarter took a hit because of it. And the same thing is going to happen to Spotify. Spotify needs to watch out for its bottom line, and they knew exactly what they were doing when they signed Joe Rogan. I mean, everybody knows what kind of topics Joe Rogan talks about. They know his personality and they know his guests, and it shouldn't have been a shock at all that Joe Rogan was going to bring people like Alex Jones on his show. But what's interesting is even media outlets like Vulture are saying that these employees might have overstepped, that, Spotify knew exactly what they were going to do. I mean, how hard is it to just be like, oh my God, it's Alex Jones, just don't listen to that episode. If you don't like Alex Jones, don't listen to it. Remember when that used to be a thing? People would just turn off shows or movies they didn't like. Now we have to make sure that people get canceled, not just the guests, not just the host, but the network, the advertisers, everybody associated with it has to be canceled. They can't exist. It's painful for them to exist. So anyway, this is coming from Reclaim the Net. This was a couple of days ago, but I did miss this article. Censorship-driven Spotify employees internally flagged the recent Alex Jones Joe Rogan episode. So the Joe Rogan Experience podcast is causing tension within Spotify. Some more radical employees have reportedly flagged some of the podcast content. Spotify acquired exclusivity of the Joe Rogan Experience, the world's most popular podcast, back in May. By the end of the year, the podcast will be available exclusively on Spotify. While the acquisition is paying off, the show has been number one on Spotify since its arrival on the platform. It's been outperforming audience expectations. It has doubled Spotify's stock. It's causing tension inside Spotify as some activist employees want to stick the knife in. Again, this happened to Kickstarter too. Kickstarter suffered a massive, massive black eye at the hands of their activist employees who wanted to dictate what kinds of projects could and could not be run through the platform. And they've lost out on millions of dollars in comics projects because a lot of people went over to Indiegogo for various reasons. They went to a competitor because Kickstarter employees wanted to play gatekeeper. And again, unless your name is Mr. Spotify and it's your company, you do what the company wants you to do or you don't work there. It's really that simple. But is it? Because we're talking about Silicon Valley, we're talking about modern day employees, and they don't seem to view things that way. Everything is a platform, everything is activism. The issue is not with the host, but the guests. They had Abigail Schreier and Alex Jones, according to the Wall Street Journal. Schreier is a writer who has documented cases of detransitioners, people who reverted their gender back to their original gender. Jones is a publisher, InfoWars, and radio host, and was banned across all major social media platforms. A coordinated effort by big tech. Yeah, it was like one day of it, just Alex Jones was just gone. He was just gone off the internet. This week on Tuesday, Rogan hosted Jones along with comedian Tim Dillon. Some employees at Spotify internally flagged the episode because Jones comments on the mask mandate and vaccines. So I have to point this out because I kind of wonder if this isn't happening at YouTube on some level. That there are certain channels that get flagged by employees because there are a lot of people that review videos for monetization. And one thing I've noticed, and this conversation came up on Twitter today, actually, Bounding into Comics said they couldn't understand why their Johnny Depp video got demonetized when it was very newsy. And I told them it has been my experience that Johnny Depp is a dirty word to some YouTube employees. That whole situation is not something that is even to be discussed. And beyond Johnny Depp, it goes to like other topics like Vic Mignogna, any like controversial figures that YouTubers tend to gather around and make a lot of videos about. It seems like there are some people at YouTube that are actively trying to suppress those videos. Now, I don't know if it's a coordinated effort, like YouTube says it's apolitical. I don't know if it's YouTube themselves or if it's employees within YouTube. And that's kind of the same thing with the PewDiePie situation where PewDiePie just like disappeared one day. It might not be YouTube as a whole, but there are a lot of people that work at YouTube. And if you had some activist types at YouTube that were like, let's, flag PewDiePie, we could get them pulled down. And, a lot of these people with that mindset think that their activism is more important than their job, more important than the company, more important than the company's customers. And I could totally see something like that going down, especially with everybody working at home now. There's really no checks and balances. Somebody could do something at home and you're not going to see them do it. It's not like you got your coworker in the cubicle next to you being like, what the hell are you doing? Don't do that. So I don't know. I'm just saying, just a theory I have that I think there were some rogue employees at YouTube as well. So anyway, they said it was employees at Spotify internally flagging the episode. Per the Wall Street Journal, a recent thread in the company's Ethics Club channel centered on Mr. Rogan's episode with Mr. Jones. Employees circulated information on how to flag content for review by Spotify's trust and safety team, according to people familiar with the matter. So hashtag Ethics Club channel. So this is, I guess, their Slack channel. So you've got Spotify employees telling other Spotify employees how to flag content on Spotify. Their most financially successful content they paid $100 million for, content that's blown Spotify up tenfold in the last couple months. And you've got your own employees trying to tank Joe Rogan's show. That's kind of a conflict of interest, isn't it? I mean, most people would get fired for that. Like you were trying to damage the company. Anyway, the team is responsible for determining whether shows or music on the platform violate company policies, barring content that incites violence or hatred, and can remove content if it crosses those lines. Jones said the masks do not necessarily help reduce the spread of the virus. So yeah, he's circulating his ideas. They said that they do some fact checks, though. Rogan said that he fact-checked every single thing that Alex Jones has said. So it's not like he's just letting him run at the mouth and not checking what he says. And Alex Jones does say some really batshit crazy stuff. He said that Jones says a lot of crazy things, but sometimes they're accurate. Other employees at the company don't mind Jones. They understand controversy is why his podcast is popular. He's the biggest voice by far that's going to accelerate our business. Getting him on Spotify and soon exclusively is going to help bring a lot more audience on the platform, and hopefully we can spread that to other programming, an employee told the Wall Street Journal. Again, people don't understand the concept. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Don't listen to it. I don't think somebody who subscribes to Spotify for music is going to be listening to Joe Rogan by accident. It's a totally different thing. Rogan maintains creative control of his show, and Jones says it's in Rogan's contract to be able to choose his own guests and not be censored. However, after hosting Schreier on one of his podcasts in September, some Spotify employees suggested the podcast needed editorial supervision. Thankfully, the management did not think that was necessary. I think more creators are going to have to push back. And I do think that some variation of this is happening at YouTube, because I know YouTube does hire external video auditors or whatever to go through and make sure that the videos are, especially if they're flagged, to make sure that they meet YouTube standards and guidelines. And as someone who years ago used to freelance doing like photo reviews and video reviews for Shutterstock, I used to do reviews for Shutterstock. And I know there are Slack channels out there with thousands of employees doing the same thing, and they're all comparing notes and they're bitching about this or bitching about that. But I do believe that something similar to this is going on YouTube right now. I think you've got people that are sort of either contract employees or they're working at home or whatever that are flagging content. Again, I don't necessarily think it's YouTube's policy per se, but I do think you've got some employees that think that the platform is their activist platform. Now, it's interesting because now the original article was on the Wall Street Journal, but even Vulture is saying that, what's the deal? Vulture. Here's the thing about the story for me. Practically everybody, this is coming from, who wrote this article? Nicholas Qua, I think. Here's the thing about the story for me. Practically everybody knew in their bones that the Jones-Rogan situation was going to be inevitable under Spotify's watch. So why does it seem like the company didn't entirely expect to handle something like this when they signed Rogan? You can't say the company didn't have ample warning. In addition to Rogan's entire track record, the Joe Rogan Experience gave Spotify 2 incidents around this general area the very month it debuted on the platform. The first is Rogan inadvertently reciting a debunked conspiracy theory about left-wing people being arrested for intentionally starting wildfires. He later apologized for that. And then they talked about this author, Abigail Shrier. Again, I'm not familiar with her, but she is very controversial, I guess. So furthermore, according to a motherboard report, as a result of the signing, Spotify started to experience emerging tension with its workforce over content policy questions, which partly came through in a company town hall in which some employees raised concerns over Rogan's history with comments considered transphobic. These were light brushes compared to the Jones-Rogan situation, which presents the company with most extreme manifestation of this content moderation problem. But they nevertheless were signals that should have prompted Spotify to ramp up some process around pulling together a clear, consistent, and communicable content policy as soon as humanly possible. Let's pull back for a second. I don't believe there's any future in which Spotify does nothing to rock the Joe Rogan boat. Joe Rogan is Spotify's premier signing and into its push into podcasting. That's it. They knew what they were getting. They knew what they were getting into. And, the employees have to understand, like, this was a company decision, and you can have feelings about Joe Rogan or his guests or whatever, but they dropped $100 million on him. He's absolutely bringing it. He's not some like hole in the wall rando. The Joe Rogan Experience is the most popular podcast on the planet right now. And if your employees are out there trying to tank that, I think it's a conflict of interest, and maybe those employees should go someplace else. That's my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with what Joe Rogan says. You don't have to agree with what Alex Jones says. But if you're working for the company, this is who they hired, and it's making the company a lot of money. It's paying your paycheck. You either choose to work for the company or you don't work for the company. And trying to tank Joe Rogan when the deal's already been done, isn't going to work out very well. Look at Kickstarter. They unionized. Remember how everybody was like, oh my God, Kickstarter, this is fantastic for tech. All these employees get to unionize and tell the man what content they're going to put on their platform. And then the first chance Kickstarter had when things got a little rough, choppy water, they tossed all the union employees overboard. And now they're replacing them with presumably non-union employees. So you guys are not going to get rid of Joe Rogan. You're going to put a big target on your forehead and you're going to get gone yourselves, is what's going to happen. They spent way too much money on him to toss him overboard because your feelings are hurt because he had Alex Jones on his show. So we'll see what happens. I am very interested in this situation because, like I said before, I do think that there's something potentially similar going on at YouTube right now where we've got rogue employees just kind of playing armchair activist. And I think it does explain some of the flaggings, the false flaggings, the demonetizations. I've had videos that were green go to yellow, which is partial demonetization, and then go back to green. because I think they've been like, they were reviewed, they were flagged by somebody at YouTube, and then somebody else reviewed them and they're like, this didn't violate anything. I do think there's a power struggle going on between Silicon Valley companies and their employees, and you might be better off hiring employees that are not going to hijack your platform to use for activism, that they're actually interested in making money. Just an opinion. Gonna wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture, news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later.